Hello everybody, welcome back to Read and Reread. I am Angelia and today I want to talk about my November TBR. We have about a week left of October and I am happily reading some books this week that I will share when I finish them, but I'm thinking ahead to November. I've been thinking ahead for a couple of weeks and gathering some books. There are several events and themes that I want to participate in. And so I'm going to share them with you now, and you can share with me any feedback you have about these books or things that you're thinking about, or maybe some of these will give you an idea if you're still wondering what you might want to read in November. So let's just take a look at what I have in my pile. And as always, these are completely subject to changes and substitutions based on my moods or coming across a book that I end up deciding I don't like it or the timing isn't right or whatever happens. But these are my plans. They're just plans, okay? It's a consideration list. All right, so first of all, and some of them I feel more strongly about than others, so I'll tell you as I go. As always. So first of all, the final novel in the Forster read-along is going to be Maurice, we read them in the order in which he wrote them. Well, I guess we read them in the order of publication, actually, because he wrote this book in 1914, but it wasn't published till after his death in 1971. According to my little blurb on the back, it said, here's what it says. It tells the story of Maurice Hall, an undergraduate at Cambridge before World War I who discovers that he is homosexual. The manuscript was found in Forster's rooms at Cambridge after his death in 1970. Publishable, a note on the manuscript in his own hand said, but worth it? Acclaim for the novel on its publication firmly answered Forster's question. So I have read this before, and I remember reading this and seeing the movie with blanking Hugh Grant a million years ago. So this will be a reread. I'm very excited to reread it because I think I've only read it the one time and I did like it. And I didn't really know the history of it or the significance of it in a more historical context and in the context of Forster's life. So rereading it now with the benefit of the group, I'm really looking forward to that. So that's Maurice, and it's in this anthology that I've been bringing out all year that has Room with a View, Howard's End, and Morris. And I'm really happy that I got to put this book to use again and reread these novels this year because it has really been a worthwhile pursuit. I really have loved this read along. All right, another group that I participate in. Well, I'm pretty much a fair weather friend in this group, but it's the banned book club at the local branch of my public library. And I kind of go off and on depending on if I feel like reading that book, or sometimes I feel like it, but I just somehow the time gets away. So I'm very hit and miss. I go about half the time. So I skipped it in October. It was Lady Chatterley's Lover, and I just did not feel like, when the time came around, I just didn't feel like reading it. So I skipped it. But in November, the book is The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. And I've never read this book, but it's been on my very long back list of things that I am intending to read. And so since it has come up in the group and it's not especially long, I mean, there's really no excuse. So it's especially with the opportunity to discuss it with some other people. So I am going to read it. And I have to tell you the story. This is the most readerly, bookish little moment. So I went to the library to pick up some holds, which is, already kind of bookish, and so the librarian who's in charge of the book club was there. And first I got busted for not showing up for Lady Chatterley, but then she goes, oh, well, do you have the November book? And I said, okay, what is it? The Bluest Eye. No, I don't have a copy of that. So she goes in the back because she had pulled the copies from the branches so that the club could check them out. And she comes out with 4 different ones. And she was like, well, here, take a look at the fonts and see which one you want. And I was like, oh, that is so bookish to know that people want to compare the sizes of the books and the fonts. And I was like, oh, I want the hardback with the pretty photo. So anyway, I am planning to read that for real. All right, now there's a couple of major events that I want to participate in also in November. And the first one is reading books by Indigenous authors. I don't know that there is a host or an event specifically on BookTube about this, or if it's just something that people choose to do. So if there actually is an official host and all that, I apologize for not knowing about it, and you can correct me, but I am going to read some books by Indigenous authors this month. I'm very excited about. I have a little trio selected of books that I have never read that I have been wanting to read. So I kind of saved them up, and here we go. So this one you saw in my recent book haul, Ragged Company by Richard Wagamese, who recently died. Well, not that recently. I mean, it's been about 5 or 6 years. But I've never read him. I got some good feedback when I was talking about this book. A couple of people had read some other book by him that they had really liked. And this is a book about a group of homeless Indigenous people in Canada who find a winning lottery ticket, but they need help from somebody to claim it because they don't have any fixed address. And they all, I don't know if they actually live in an old movie theater or if they just hang out in it, but it says they take refuge from a Arctic front in an old movie theater. So I really am drawn to the story of this, group of disparate people forming a community, and interested to see what happens in the story. Another one, you have seen this before if you've been watching my channel for a while, is The Plague of Doves by Louise Erdrich. This infamously has been on my TBR for, drumroll, 15 years. And then I finally bought a copy earlier this year at a secondhand used bookstore. And then now it's sat for about 5 or 6 more months. And so it is time to read The Plague of Doves. I do not even know. I don't know what it's about. I just know I do like this author. I've read a number of her books. I really loved, I guess at this point it was 20, I don't know if I read The Sentence in 21 or 22, but it was one of my favorite books. I think I read it last year, and it was one of my favorite books of the year. It doesn't matter. I really love that book. I've loved a number of her previous books as well, but I have never read this one. Always heard how good it was. Zero idea what the plot is about. I don't care. I'm going to read it, and I'm excited. All right, the final book in my trio of Indigenous authors for November is Moon of the Crusted Snow by Waubeshig. This is another Canadian author. Let's see, does it tell us? He is a Canadian author and journalist from the Wagamese First Nation. There's a sequel to this that either is about to come out or just came out. So if I love this book, I will be in pursuit of the sequel. But this is a post-apocalyptic story. Here's what the description says. As one society collapses, another is reborn. With winter looming, a small northern Anishinaabe community goes dark. Cut off from power and communication with no foreseeable resolution, only very few residents truly realize the community's shortfalls. When unexpected visitors arrive, escaping the crumbling society to the south, tensions rise and allegiances are divided. The harsh winter months pass slowly, and the food supply dwindles as the death toll and panic rise. But the greatest threat to the survival of the reserve may come from within the community itself. Woo! Okay, I love a good dystopian or post-apocalyptic story. For some reason, this description, I thought of a lot of things. I thought of for some reason, I thought of The Road, I guess because of dwindling food. I thought of The Long Winter from the Little House on the Prairie books. I thought of I always forget the name of that. The Ruman Alum novel where they're in the cabin and then the other people show up. Oh, I always forget. We were just forgetting the title of this book the other day and I had to look it up, and it got away again, but I'll put it up on the screen. Anyway, I'm sure this book is not like any of those, but all those things rolled through my head. And I had this book on my list as something that sounded interesting. And then during Shorty's September, Heather read this during her one book a day thing. I'm going to put her channel down below. And she thought it was incredible. It blew her away. And so that just reinforced my desire to read it. So let me know if you have read this book. And I really hope I love it. And then I can look for the follow-up. So the next event that I have the most books set aside for is Nonfiction November. And I started out with an even bigger pile. I kind of jotted down nonfiction books that I heard about over the past several months. I've been keeping a list and looking and see which ones are at my library, particularly because I'm kind of fickle about nonfiction. I like a good nonfiction book, but I don't read a lot of them, and I frequently DNF them. That's the most likely kind of book for me to DNF because it just, I don't know, it's just a more difficult read for me to get into it and really want to stick with it and to maintain my attention. There's a lot of nonfiction books about a lot of topics that I'm interested in, but I'm not interested in them for 300, 400 pages. I'm interested in them for, 6 pages or Wikipedia or just something, not so much. I love kids' nonfiction books that just lays it out and there's pictures. I don't know, there's something weird about my attention span in nonfiction. Why can I read an 800-page 19th century novel, but a contemporary book about a topic I'm interested in just creates a bit of a barrier for me sometimes. So I did look back in my reading journal, and I've read 7 nonfiction books this year so far, not counting children's books, because I pick those up often and just because they attract my attention, or I just want a quick hit on a biography or something. But actual nonfiction books intended for adult or young adult readers that I read the whole book, 7 of them to this date, which sounds might sound a little paltry, but for me it's actually a pretty good number. And I'd be pretty impressed with myself if I got to the end of the year and I had read like 10. So if I read several this month, I did pretty good. And maybe next year I might try to aim for like 1 a month and just sort of up my ante a little bit. But having given out all those millions of excuses and disclaimers about my sorry past with reading nonfiction, here are 5 books that I have selected. I don't think probably that I will read all 5, but I might maybe over the rest of the year, or I might just pick out, the top 3, or something might get left by the wayside. But okay, I'm just going to show them to you. I'm going to stop talking and show them to you. I'm going to keep talking and show them to you. All right, the first one is On Juneteenth, and they all have, I could take out the library hold slips. On Juneteenth by Annette Gordon Reed. It says winner of the Pulitzer Prize. Do they say she won a Pulitzer Prize or this won a Pulitzer Prize? No, the one that won the Pulitzer Prize was The Hemmings of Monticello, An American Family, which also sounds very interesting to me. But this, I was so excited that it was slim because I knew that I would definitely not get stuck. This book, I've heard about this author and I've been interested in this author. And then when I did my buddy read with Kristen from Enter the Book, we read Passing, and we shared with each other another book we had read. And I told her about How the Word is Passed by Clint Smith, and she told me about On Juneteenth by Annette Gordon Reed. We were talking about just issues of race in America and in our communities, and anyway, that's kind of one time where the conversation led. So she highly recommended this book, and it's very, we both live in Texas, and it has relevance. So this is about the history. It provides a historian's view of the nation's long road to Juneteenth, recounting both its origins in Texas and the enormous hardships that African Americans have endured in the centuries since, from Reconstruction through Jim Crow and beyond. And the author is a Texas native and a descendant of enslaved people brought to Texas as early as the 1820s. So I've been on kind of a very slow-paced mission to address holes in my historical education, and so this will play a role in that. The next one is also a history book, but on a different topic, and it is The Poisoner's Handbook by Deborah Blum. Boy, there are some serious glares going on here. Murder and the Birth of Forensic Medicine in Jazz Age New York. So this is one, the topic sounds interesting, but I'm not entirely sure I want to read a full-length book on the topic. This happens to me sometimes. I'm kind of excited and then I get thrown off by the fact that it's kind of more than I want, but I'm going to give it a try and see if it catches on or if it's just going to be a browse and return. But this is about, it says, a fascinating jazz age tale of chemistry and detection, poison and murder. In early 20th century New York, poisons offered an easy path to the perfect crime. Science had no place in the Tammany Hall controlled coroner's office and corruption ran rampant. However, with the appointment of Chief Medical Examiner Charles Norris in 1918, the poison game changed forever. So it's about the beginning of the forensic detection of poison. This made me think about the actual prompts. I forgot to say this at the beginning of this segment about Nonfiction November. I totally forgot to talk about the host, who is Olive of A Book Olive. And there are prompts that go with Nonfiction November. And I already had my books kind of gathered up before I heard about the prompts. I don't even think I understood last year that there was a host. So a year late, I'm sorry for not acknowledging Olive last year, but she did offer 4 prompts. And some people may like to structure their choices of books or the way that they consider books based on these 4 prompts. And one of the prompts is fraud. And so I thought about that when I looked at The Poisoner's Handbook, because, you know, murder and thinking that you're going to get away with it is definitely a form of fraud. And then the fraud is going to be uncovered by the evolution of forensic science. Kind of true crimey, kind of historical. Let me know if you've read it. Somebody recommended it to me. So you might be watching this video and saying, it was me, I can't remember. But anyway, I'm going to check it out. Alrighty. I have another book that's also a historical book, and it's the only one in the pile that's actually my own book. Most of these I got from the library. I'm so skittish about nonfiction, I don't buy it very often. But I showed this in a haul several months ago, but I haven't read it yet. And it's Square Haunting, 5 Writers in London Between the Wars. So this one would be the literary entry in the batch. And you can see this great cover with the photos of these women. And this book is about the following women: poet H.D., the novelist Dorothy Sayers, classicist Jane Harrison, economic historian Eileen Power, and author and publisher Virginia Woolf. So I'm familiar with H.D., Sayers, and Woolf. The other 2 women I think I've heard their name because I bought this book and read this, but I don't really know their work. And this is about it says, in the early 20th century, Mecklenburgh Square, a hidden architectural gem in the heart of London, was a radical address. On the outskirts of Bloomsbury, known for the eponymous group who lived in squares, painted in circles, and loved in triangles, the square was home to students, struggling artists, and revolutionaries. So this is about the interwar period and these 5 women who all lived in this same square. And so just look at these creative women's history. But again, I'm a little bit, you know, I've got my big book trepidation it kicks in at a lower page count when it's nonfiction. So I'm really interested in this, and I'm hoping that the style of the writing propels me to get really into it, because I want to read about, I love that time period. These women are really interesting to me, so I hope that it grabs, it keeps my attention. I think it's the biggest of the batch. All right, so then I also have 2 memoirs, and here's another problem about me and nonfiction. I don't read a lot of memoirs. I do once in a while. I read one and I really love it. Most of them I don't read. I'm really not drawn to any of the celebrity ones or the royal family ones. I I don't like biographies a whole lot. There's exceptions to all these rules. I have read a few biographies I like, but usually it's more like this kind of thing where there's the interconnectedness of a group of people. That's more interesting to me than a long book about just one person. And memoirs are tricky too in that regard. I just don't want to read hundreds and hundreds of pages about one actor or whoever it is. So, but I did pick out two memoirs that looked interesting to me. The first one is I Am by Maggie O'Farrell. I love Maggie O'Farrell. I love her writing, so I'm counting on the style of this appealing to me, and I've heard good things about this book from several booktubers whose opinions I trust. And this is about, it says 17 brushes with death. The childhood illness she was not expected to survive, a teenage yearning to escape that nearly ended in disaster, a terrifying encounter on a remote path, a mismanaged labor in an understaffed hospital, and most terrifying of all, an ongoing daily struggle to protect her daughter, for whom this book was written, from a medical condition that leaves her unimaginably vulnerable to myriad dangers. So I feel like the structure of this book sounds interesting. The fact that she has 17 brushes with death, I really want to know more about that. And I have a lot of faith in her writing skills to that I will enjoy this book. And then finally, in the nonfiction, this one's kind of a little bit random, but I heard one or two people talking about it and it sounded interesting to me, and that is Messy Roots, a graphic memoir of a Wuhanese American. So this is sort of a coming of age story and a coming out story about a young woman named Laura who was born in Wuhan, China, immigrates to Texas, and she has her teen years. It says she's a girl who simply wants to make the basketball team, escape Chinese school, and figure out why girls make her heart flutter. And I guess in the midst of the story, 2020 happens too, which brings Wuhan into people's awareness in a way that we didn't know before. This book was published in 2022. And it looks kind of funny, and I don't know, I'm interested. So I just wanted to challenge myself to pick a different format of book also within this particular month of nonfiction challenge. I wanted a variety of formats, topics, etc., so that if one thing doesn't agree with me, I can try something else. Or the biggest surprise of all would be if I read all of them and just made a 5-book sweep out of the whole thing. All right, so that's quite a lot of books, but I know that won't be the entirety of my reading month, because we have to leave room for the moody randomness of books on my cart. I have new books, I have backlist books that have been sitting there a while, I have things that I requested at the library that haven't come in. So any of these books might appear in my reading weeks. So I'm only going to highlight one that I really have an intention to try, if not this month, by the end of the year. Boy, that was a hedge, wasn't it? Okay, I'm putting it in the November TBR, but there's a lot of books here, so hopefully I will get to it. But so let me give a little backstory. So this is a book that Stephen read, I think, at the end of last year, and he loved it. He said it was one of his best books of the year, and he thought, oh, you're gonna love it, you should read it too. And I was like, oh yeah. And I got a copy. You've seen it in a haul, and you've seen it in numerous TBRs that did not come to pass. And so it's been kind of, it and he have been nagging me all year about reading this book. Meanwhile, the other book that I've been bugging him to read all year is Demon Copperhead, and he is now finally reading it. So that has lit a fire under my lazy little butt to read, here it comes, The Promise by Damon Galgut. So this is the book that he has, every time I'm looking at books and thinking what I'm going to read next, he reminds me that I haven't read The Promise. So this won the Booker Prize in 2021. It is a South African author who, in this book, as best I understand, whoops, I hit myself in the face with it. As best I understand, it is about a family that begins to crumble after the death of the mother, the matriarch, and in the wake of the father not honoring a promise that she had made and asked him to fulfill, a promise that was made to their longtime housekeeper. And I am expecting that it has to do with family turmoils and events, and also issues of class and race in South Africa. It's been a while since I read a South African novel, so I'm looking forward to that, especially since it's a more contemporary story, I believe. I mean, I don't know if I guess it's set in contemporary. I know it's written contemporary because it just won the prize a couple years ago. So I've had good intentions for months on end, but I really am, I'm going on record and on camera to say I am planning to read The Promise. So let me know if you have already read The Promise and what you thought about it, or if you also think you might want to read it, or not, whatever. Tell me what you think. So that's it. Like I said, there are some books in my peripheral vision that I might include, but this is what I'm specifically planning for November. Let me know what you think, if you read any of these books, or what you have in mind for November. And I have 1 week left to enjoy the rest of my October selections, but I'm really looking forward to digging into this stack of books. I hope that you are having a great day and a great week, and I'll be back on Friday for Friday Reads. See you then. Bye.